The MBTI framework proves to be very elegant due to the so-called cognitive functions that each individual uses to different degrees. It should be noted that everyone uses all 8 functions, but their personality type dictates which functions are preferable to that individual. I'll break down the outline of these cognitive functions and their order in this video, but I plan to go into far greater depth in future videos. If you haven't already, it's probably worth your time to take a reliable MBTI test online, so you know your type, so my teaching will be more valuable to you. This understanding I'm about to give you will give you an excellent framework of understanding of how you and others act in the world, and why it's okay to act totally differently from most people that aren't similar to you. So, as I've already mentioned, there are 8 cognitive functions to choose from. These are named as follows: Introverted Sensing, Extroverted Sensing, Introverted Thinking, Extroverted Thinking, Introverted Feeling, Extroverted Feeling, Introverted Intuition, and Extroverted Intuition. As you can see, there are 4 so-called types of functions: sensing, thinking, feeling, and intuiting, which are further broken down into introverted and extroverted types. Each personality type has 4 main slots in which they have a unique permutation of these 8 possible functions. For example, an INFJ's 4 main cognitive functions in order are as follows: Introverted Intuition, Extroverted Feeling, Introverted Thinking, and Extroverted Sensing. For every personality type, each slot alternates between extroversion and introversion, and each of the 4 types, i.e. thinking, feeling, sensing, and intuiting, can only be used once in these 4 slots. Another example is the ESTJ. They use extroverted thinking first, then introverted sensing, then extroverted intuition, and then introverted feeling. Don't worry if you don't understand this at first. We will further break it apart in future videos, so you will hopefully have a good understanding of it and can apply it to your own life. Now, as I've already mentioned, there are 4 main slots for the cognitive functions for each personality type, and the order of them is important. Let's describe what importance a function in each position has for any given personality. In the first slot is the function that the individual uses predominantly throughout their life, and feels most at home and confident when they are using it. They use it without even knowing they are using it, because it is so familiar to them. This is known as the dominant function of that person. The second slot is the function that the individual uses second most. This is the function the person should focus on using more if they want to experience more personal growth as an individual. This is called the support or auxiliary function of the individual. The third slot is a function the individual uses third most. This is the function the individual develops a lot more as they get older. The third function is the polar opposite of the second function. And finally, we have the fourth slot. This is the function the individual naturally struggles with and may only show it in times of significant stress. This function is known as the inferior function. The fourth function is the polar opposite of the first function. Now we have the basics of how the cognitive functions are set up for a given personality type. Let's give a brief overview of each cognitive function that we will go into greater depth in future videos. The functions can also be categorized into perceiving and judging functions. The perceiving functions are how the individual perceives the world from their subjective experience. The perceiving functions include intuition and sensing. And we have the judging functions, being how the individual makes decisions based on how they see the world. So the judging functions are somewhat secondary to the perceiving functions. The judging functions are thinking and feeling. Let's begin with introverted intuition. This is my dominant function, so I have no idea I'm using it most of the time. This is perhaps the most mysterious function because it operates mostly subconsciously. Because this is an introverted function, it focuses mostly inwards, and because it is intuition, it focuses on the abstract. So introverted intuition can be understood as seeing images, dreams, systems or patterns in the internal world of the individual. It is often future-oriented, transcendent, and somewhat detached from the outside world. It generally aims to simplify complex constellations of ideas or concepts to a single unifying concept or idea. Next, we have extroverted intuition. Because this function is extroverted, it operates on the external world. And because this function is intuitive, it works in terms of abstract concepts. Therefore, it generally operates in terms of abstractions on the external world. More precisely, it sees multiple scattering possibilities from a single idea or concept, and they are explored by the user. Third, we have Introverted Feeling. This function is introverted, so it focuses inwards, and is feeling, so it operates in terms of emotions of that person. In general, it is extremely authentic and personal to that individual, and they do not tend to show this function outwardly. Next up is Extroverted Feeling. This function is extroverted, so it operates on the outer world, and is feeling, so it works in terms of emotions. In general, it aims to create social harmony in those around them, and is attuned to the feelings of others around them. After that, we have Introverted Thinking. This function, as you might have guessed, is aimed inwards because it is introverted, and is highly logical and reasoned because it is thinking. It can be thought of as constructing a sound internal framework of how the world works, and using this framework to problem solve. Next, we have Extroverted Thinking. This function is directed outwards because it is extroverted, and it is highly logical and reasoned because it is thinking. It can be described as organising our environment by planning, scheduling, and designating tasks to attain a desired goal. After that, we have Introverted Sensing. This function is directed inwards because it is introverted, and is sensing, so it is focused on concrete sensory information perceived by the individual. It involves linking current sensory information to past information accumulated by the individual, which a feeling is associated with. It is great for noticing if something is different than before. And finally, we have Extroverted Sensing. This is obviously focused on the external world, and is concerned with information gathered by the senses. It is concerned with perceiving sensory information in the here and now, and immediately reacting to our environment, and being absorbed in the experience. That concludes the introduction to the cognitive functions. We'll explore them further in future. Thanks for listening.